Welcome. Thank you all for coming. We are asking Governor DeSantis to stop the executions and to work to end executions in Florida altogether. Yesterday, Louisiana had its first execution in 15 years and became the second state using nitrogen suffocation as its execution method. Now we see legislation here in Florida and in other states to expand the death penalty, to expand the number of ways we can execute prisoners. That's why we wanted to bring our message today that the thing that needs to be doged is the death penalty. The most inefficient government program that exists is capital punishment. It's not stopping any such murders, but it's traumatizing and re-traumatizing the victims in these cases. This bell that we have here, we call it the Delaware Bell, and so far this bell has been tolled at the state capitals in Alabama, in Indiana, in Louisiana, and now here in Florida, that encourages communities of faith to toll their bells in sounding out opposition to the death penalty. People have signed this from all over the world, people of faith, people who are deeply concerned about government overreach and fairness in a legal system, just folks that are concerned about the state being able to take life in all of our names. And we're standing in opposition to all executions in every state and also under the federal government. Well, we are hopeful that the petitions and the prayers that come with them from millions of people all over the world, even Pope Francis, is that will touch the heart of Governor DeSantis, and he will move on this issue and turn from his evil ways and stop setting execution dates and work to abolish the death penalty in Florida and in the nation. Executing somebody before their natural death is a violation of many of our ethics, and we need to stand up and say it's wrong every single time. And welcome everybody. It's February 1st and time again for the forecast, the Death Penalty Action's regular program, normally on the first Sunday of the month, where we look at upcoming executions. What are the issues? What do we do about it? Who's working on it? Normally with leaders from the state organizations, and that's how it's going to be tonight. And just before we turn it over to Florida, I do want to say that this is, death penalty action. And if anyone that is speaking who is not a staff or board member of Death Penalty Action is speaking for themselves or their own organization. Also, this is a safe space for people who oppose the death penalty. So any shenanigans in the chat on the Zoom or in the social media channels, well, there's a zero tolerance policy. Such people would be dismissed without any warning if we see anything that doesn't belong. So we're grateful that everybody's here. Please introduce yourselves where you're watching from in the chat, and we welcome any questions. You can use the Q&A or ask questions in the chat. It's easier to catch them if they're in the Q&A button. Also, I do want to say we're working diligently to figure out and get closed captioning so that the closed captions for the hearing impaired can be on the screen, and we're just trying to get that sorted out because we paid for it, and we're just trying to figure out what's the button we got to push to make it work every time. So that's in process, and we apologize that it's not here tonight. But in any case, welcome, and let's open tonight with Florida. That's why we started with the Florida video, and welcome Grace Hanna, the Executive Director of Floridians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Abe, for having us. I'm here with our communications director, Bridget Maloney. She also has her cat behind her, so everyone say hi to her cat, Patty. But it is great to be here with you tonight. I'm sorry that we have to be, but I am based here in Tallahassee, Florida, which is the capital of Florida, obviously. And we are about to start another year of what seems to be a pretty remarkable pace of executions. Last year in Florida, we had an unexpectedly busy year. In 2023, Governor DeSantis carried out 6 executions. In 2024, he carried out one. And then in 2025, he carried out 19. So far in 2026, we have 3 executions scheduled. They scheduled 3 executions within a 20-day span. So it appears that we are proceeding at least at the same pace, if not faster, than last year. Bridget is going to talk a little bit about the 3 executions that we have scheduled, but first, I just want to situate Florida in the national death penalty context. Here, we have the most expansive death penalty of any state in the country. You can be sentenced to death here with a jury vote as low as 8 of your 12 jurors voting for death. And I want to remind people that in every other crime, to send someone to prison for robbing a store, you need all 12 jurors to agree. But to sentence someone to death in Florida, you only need 8. That has led to us having an incredibly large death row. We have 252 people on our death row as of this morning, I believe. And so we make it easier to get a death sentence. And this has been complicated by the fact that we also have the highest rate of wrongful conviction and exoneration in Florida. So 30 men have been exonerated off of our death row. That's 30 people who we literally said, we sentence you to die. The people of the state of Florida sentence you to death. And we later found out that they didn't do it. They were judicially exonerated and sent home. It's 30 people whose lives were ruined. And in the week ahead, we're going to be preparing for our first execution on February 10th, and that involves supporting the legal teams. It also involves our petitions and letter writing actions to the governor. And we're also going to be spreading the word across Florida. I'm going to be speaking at Florida State with one of those death row exonerees in a few weeks, and Bridget's going to talk more about a few other events we have. But the last thing I want to say is that in 2025, at the end of the year, we published our year-end report, and I'm really proud of it. I think it captures everything that happened last year really well. And so I'm going to drop it in the chat, but you can also go to bit.ly/FADP25 to read it. And I would encourage all of you to do that. And it looks like what I did didn't link, so I'm going to grab it again. And from there, I'm going to pass to Bridget.
Hi, everyone. And the same thing that Grace said, it actually feels like it's been quite a while since I've seen you all, which is odd because we will definitely be seeing a lot of each other over the next, probably for a while. But as Grace said, I'm Abe.
Bridget, I was about to say, can you introduce yourself? And also,
Yes,
who's that behind you?
Oh, yes, I was going to say, so I'm communications director for FADP. My name is Bridget Maloney. I am based in New York, where I go to law school. This is my cat, Patty, who is seldom ever down here with me. But tonight she wanted to visit for emotional support for obvious reasons that Grace stated. So we are definitely not learning any of the lessons that we talked about learning at the end of last year. Grace and I were talking about how it was about 50 days between receiving Frank's warrant in November and receiving Ronnie Heath's warrant this year. So that's not much of a pause to really consider anything, any of the major allegations raised in the execution spree last year. Ronnie Heath is scheduled to be executed on February 10th. That will be the first execution of this year and also the first out of 3 scheduled in a 20-day span. Ronnie was sentenced to death for the murder of Michael Sheridan. He and his brother were both charged, convicted, found guilty of the same exact crime. In fact, Ronnie's brother was, and we talk here a lot about felony murder cases, which felony murder is a capital offense in Florida. And if you commit felony murder, you are eligible for the death penalty. But the disparity in Ronnie's case is that Ronnie refused to testify against his brother, whereas his brother, terrified of receiving a death sentence, testified against Ronnie and received life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years, which means that when that warrant was signed, Kenneth, his brother, was parole eligible, even though he was the trigger man in this crime, whereas Ronnie, who was by no accounts the trigger man in this case, is going to be executed. And that's not to say anything about parole or even Kenneth. It's to say that we are in a system that is misleading people into even thinking that it operates the way we say it does, when somebody quite literally could be responsible for being the trigger man and taking somebody's life and parole eligible in somewhere like Florida, whereas someone who participated in that crime and did not pull the trigger is going to be executed for it. Something else incredibly important that Ronnie is raising is the lethal injection protocol being violated in Florida. There is plenty of information that you can read on FEDP's website and social media, and we are going to have a lot more in the coming weeks, as that's also Melvin Trotter's claim, who I'll talk about in a second. But in Frank Walls's case in December, public records were basically introduced into litigation that stated that Florida had used expired execution drugs, had withdrawn incorrect dosage of drugs. There are several accusations that have never been refuted by the state, only to say that the protocol does not require them to keep records. Even if they messed up in the past, they won't mess up again in the future, probably. But also there may be not even their records because they're heavily redacted by the DOC that gave them the records in the first place. So none of which are saying that they're not using expired drugs or wrong dosage of drugs. And they recognize that the courts can't force them to provide those records. So that is ongoing in Ronnie's Heath, of course, because we have not addressed any of those concerns, nor rejected them. And so lawyers are continuing to press questions about why we are torturing people to death in a at least transparent process. And that brings me to Melvin Trotter. He is scheduled to be executed on February 24th for the murder of Virgie Lamford. And this is another Black man who has killed a white victim in Florida that we talked about a lot last year. And his claims are going to be filed tomorrow. So we will have a lot more information about his case. What I can tell you now is that he was sentenced twice by a non-unanimous jury, and that his case was never litigated in the way that it was supposed to be regarding intellectual disability claims, ineffective assistance of counsel. And I would actually like to have Grace maybe speak for a minute about Billy. But our third, which I just want to mention because it's March 3rd, which is literally in a month, and I can't believe, even after being here for 5 years and being with you all on vigils and forecasts since 2023, that I'm telling you that we have 3 scheduled. But I'm going to invite Grace to talk about Billy, who is scheduled to be executed on March 3rd. But before I do, I just want to share something that I shared in an email we sent out, and I hope that everybody here subscribes if you haven't already, that it is infuriating for me to write and for me to ask you all to beg the Florida Clemency Board, aka the governor, the attorney general, the chief financial officer, and the agricultural commissioner to stop the execution. There's nobody else who can stop it. The most awesome thing about their power is that as easily as they can wake up in the morning and set an execution for anybody who is eligible or even not eligible, they can take that away. And that is such a unique power that if more people knew that that was an option, and that just last year alone, let alone 2024 and 2023 and all of the years before that, clemency has not once ever been granted, is huge. Like this is what I described as an assembly line of killing, and there's no real guardrails to stop it other than you guys. So please continue to stay with us, even though it seems sort of futile right now. And I will stop yapping for real and invite Grace to say something about Billy before passing it back to Abe.
Thanks, Bridget. Yeah, so something that's really important to know in Florida is that unlike virtually every other state, here in Florida, the governor has the sole power to set and stop execution dates. So in most states, when someone exhausts their appeals, it goes to the prosecutors, it goes to the courts. They have, a conversation with the judge about when the execution should be scheduled for. That is not the case here in Florida. In Florida, the governor can wake up in the morning and say, I want to have an execution in 30 days. And he gets to choose a person from the list of eligible people who there's actually not a publicly available list. I know there are people on the internet who claim to keep lists. They are not accurate. I can attest to that. But he can choose anyone from that list. And so we recognize that it's frustrating to ask Governor DeSantis to stop these executions when he is the person who is scheduling them. But we still think it's very important to do so. I want to talk a bit about our third execution that's coming up on March 3rd, and that is of Billy Leon Kearse. And this is a case that I'm really very familiar with. Billy was 18 years and 84 days old when he committed a terrible crime. He committed an impulsive crime of an 18-year-old teenager, a teenage boy, but it was a horrible crime, and nothing we say can undo that. But the reality is that if Billy had committed the crime 85 days before he did, he would have received Montgomery relief, and we would currently be talking about his potential release from prison. But because this happened 85 days later, Billy is going to be executed by the state of Florida. Billy has an intellectual disability. He had a profoundly abusive early life. And most remarkably, since he's been in prison, he has really flourished. He has developed relationships. He has become an artist. He has grown into the man who was not the impulsive 18-year-old teenager who made a horrible, terrible mistake. Billy's lawyers are going to fight really hard for him, just like Melvin's lawyers are, and just like Ronnie's lawyers are. But we need all of you to be with us and support us. And that means signing petitions. That means coming to vigils. If you're in Florida and you have never been to a vigil either at Florida State Prison or elsewhere across the state, I really encourage you to go to our website and click the vigils tab. And find a way to get involved. We also have virtual vigils hosted by Death Penalty Action, which are wonderful. But I really hope you will come be in community with us at some point in these first three executions of the year. We expect that we're going to continue doing this, but one thing we are going to really try to do intentionally this year is also offer some more education about the death penalty in general. We have a webinar coming up. I believe it is on February 23rd, correct, Bridget? Yes, February 23rd. And so if you are not already getting our emails, I'm going to put the link in the chat for you to sign up so you can be the first to know and get details about registering for that. We're currently finalizing some panelists, but please, stick with us and follow along with us. And we are here to answer any questions you have or assist in whatever we can do. So I'm going to pass back to Bridget if I forgot anything at all.
There is a question from Ryan. It's in the Q&A. The legal defense for the three inmates on Death Watch in Florida have a united strategy to, or maybe it's do they have a united strategy to challenge Florida's death penalty in regards to redacted records?
Yeah, I can't speak about active litigation and what we may or may not know about it, but one thing I can say is that, the capital defense community is not massive, right? People do know each other, people do work together. But ultimately at the end of the day, each legal team is going to do what is best for their client in front of them, right? So Ronnie's lawyers are not Melvin's lawyers are not Billy's lawyers, and that is by design because we can't expect lawyers to represent the interests of all of them at one time. I'm sure Bridget could explain this better than I could, but the answer is certainly. And at the end of the day, their responsibility is to their individual client.
And Ryan, if you've got any information or writings about that, you can put a link in the chat, please. And other questions?
I will say that we're in the middle of our legislative session. We have not seen as much death penalty legislation as we saw last year. Last year, we saw some really bonkers off the wall bills, including one that authorized execution by any method not deemed unconstitutional. So that was a wild bill. This year, we have not seen as much. There was a bill that would have functionally eliminated the not guilty by reason of insanity defense here in Florida. They amended that on Friday after it got pretty beat up in a committee meeting that I was attending last week. So it will be back up tomorrow, but it does have substantial changes. So there might be more to come on that, but as of now, we are just kind of watching and waiting. And knowing that we have a gubernatorial election, actually all of our elected officials have to be reelected this year, so we are expecting them to wrap up session quickly and go back to run for reelection. So hopefully we will get through the session without anything too wacky being introduced.
Well, thank you. Comments, questions from the panel or anybody else? I've got a few thoughts too, but want to open questions first. And well, let me just say, while death penalty action is nonpartisan and doesn't endorse any candidates, we could always hope for a blue wave in the election to, get us some different legislators in policy-making positions in Florida. Who knows what's going to happen? But in addition to the vigils and the things that Grace and Bridget have talked about, I want to share that Suzanne Bosler from the Journey of Hope from Violence to Healing and I will be in Florida with the Delaware Bell, launching or lifting up the For Whom the Bell is Tolled campaign, which if you saw the opening video, you heard about that a little bit. And that's going to be, and we're doing press conferences in some of the different media markets. So we'll be in Orlando area on Wednesday morning. Looks like possibly Miami on Thursday, the Tampa Bay area on Friday, and then Jacksonville looks like Monday. This is still coming together, but we'll be all around the state and inviting people to come and stand with us and be a part of these things. So if you happen to be in the areas where we're at, we'd love to see you and meet you. And I know that there's anytime there's opportunities, we're going to let people know when we can all be together. By the way, if you're in the Gainesville area, Saturday night, they're going to be, so it's a week from last night, they'll be gathering the Gainesville Citizens for Alternatives to the Death Penalty to send, they gather twice a year to write cards. And before the holidays, they do holiday cards. And now they're gathering to do their annual birthday card signing. So they sign birthday cards to everybody that's on death row and then mail them at the appropriate time in the year, but they all get together to sign the cards and make that happen. So that's a thing that people can participate in. So before we let you all go, anything else in Florida? Any other questions? Wait, there's something in the Q&A. Ryan is asking, with the egregious errors coming to light from the Florida Department of Corrections, would Florida's legislature possibly do something about what is taking place? And Connie Johnson is asking where and when we'll be in Tampa. So that's coming together. And as to we'll have an email out about where and when we'll be in Tampa, but it's looking like Friday or Thursday. Anyway, I'll pin that down for you as well. So the question about what can be done about the egregious errors coming to light from the Department of Corrections, Grace or Bridget?
Yeah, and Bridget, I'll toss to you if you have anything to say, but I think that with the highlights, and I really do encourage everyone to read the litigation in Walls and also the litigation in Heath, and we will send out an email probably in the next day or two that'll have everything linked, but also the Substack Tracking Florida's Death Penalty has great resources and should have links to all of this as well to kind of understand the specific allegations that are being made. We also have quite a bit of content about it on our social media. But the appropriate avenue for resolving that at this point, when we are in the middle of a death warrant, is going to be through the courts, because the only way that the executions could be halted are through the courts or through the governor's pen. So while the legal teams are doing that, we certainly are making sure that the legislators are aware of what is going on, and are asking questions. But as far as their ability to actually, quote, do something about it, they're fairly limited, because we do have like the separation of the branches of government here in Florida, and the Florida Department of Corrections would run under the executive branch rather than the legislative branch. Bridget, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think, I mean, the legislature has had a history of wanting to keep all of this very secret so far as passing a bill to do so for most of it in 2021, even though the state still misunderstands what that law actually protects. But I I think that education wise with legislation, yes, to prevent, anything coming in that's new, and for, potentially in the future of preventing things like this from happening, but it definitely will be within the courts. That actually can't necessarily come from DeSantis other than stopping the execution, but in terms of, evaluating the Department of Corrections behavior and protocol. It's unfortunately actually really up to them to do, but the court would be the second best choice. And I'm sorry, I'm like smiling, which is so bad, but I can't stop staring at this cat, and I don't normally have her on with me, so I can't have her on with me again. It's quite distracting. I don't know how you guys have your pets and children on.
Well, we welcome your animals and your children as long as they behave. Um, I will mention also that there are some concerns being raised by prisoner families and advocates about conditions on death row. The French Coalition Against the Death Penalty has been asking people to write to legislators and asking legislators to go and inspect the prison. And I know that's a bigger issue, but and I don't know if you want to address that as well, Grace, but I just want to mention that that's out there, and we're seeing that in the social media as well. So it's a thing. Conditions not just in prison in Florida, but across the country, and especially right now. For example, in Mississippi, there were two prisons, including the death row prison at Parchman, where the power and the heat has been missing for days, and of course, they're the last ones anybody's ever going to get to. But that sort of thing is happening also in other states. Um, it's either too hot in the summer or too cold in the winter. But anything on conditions, Grace?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's always an important time to talk about the fact that 75% of Florida's prisons don't have air conditioning or heat. So that is a pretty remarkable fact when you consider how hot it gets here in the summer, and actually how cold it can get here in the winter. It was in the low teens this morning when I woke up. So, and it's not that they're not adding it, it's that the buildings are literally too old to be retrofitted with air conditioning. So we are so committed to locking up our citizens, but we're not willing to invest in building the buildings that would, allow us to safely do so. But I think that, in terms of conditions on death row, that is something that our organization does a lot with, kind of less public facing. But I always reiterate to the individuals on death row that I talk to, and I understand that it is so easy to become disenchanted with the grievance process when you're incarcerated and filing a grievance and feel like you never hear back. But in Florida in particular, the only way to ensure that your complaints are heard are to first exhaust all of your administrative remedies. So I know that's not a magic answer, but before anything bigger than that can be done, you have to go through the grievance process. And so if anyone is talking to someone on death row here in Florida or elsewhere, and they are raising concerns, please, please, please encourage them to do that and say, I know that it feels pointless, because often it really is. But that is the most important step.
Let's see, Grace, while we have you, there was a quick question about demographics of the death row prisoners. If you want to give a quick review of that. Thank you for the question, Natalia.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm actually pulling it up right now to tell you. So, was it asking about racial demographics
Yeah.
or, yeah. So, we have 252 people on our death row, roughly. And of those, so the way that Florida classifies race is a little bit funky. They do black, white, and Hispanic or Latino, and then other. But we know that I'm actually going to screen share for you all. So on Florida's death row, well, in Florida in general, the state's population is 78.4% white and Hispanic and Latino. On death row, it is 61.4% white and Hispanic and Latino. Similarly, Black individuals are about 15% of Florida's population. On death row, they're about 35% of Florida's population. And so it does not take a statistician to see that there's a pretty significant disparity between the racial population of Florida generally and on death row. And something that we also know that's really important to note is that people who end up on death row are often there because they killed white people or they were convicted of killing white people. It is very uncommon for someone in Florida in particular, and everywhere, but in Florida in particular, to be sentenced to death for killing a person of color. And so we see time and time again people being, convicted and sentenced to death for killing a white police officer or a white woman. And once that happens, it really seems like the rest of the story is thrown out the window.
I'll just remind, I need to find my picture of this. I've switched computers, so I gotta find the image. But Juan Melendez was one of Florida's 30 people who survived death row. They knew he was innocent even before they took him to trial. Um, but in particular, Juan was always super annoyed that so Hispanics are designated Hispanic white or Hispanic black. Juan is Puerto Rican and he's got very dark brown skin, and yet he was designated as Hispanic white. And you can even see it on his prison ID. That's what I want to find the image of and share with you because he gave it to me. This is a long, long time ago. But he gave it to me so I could show it to people. And I had it on the FADP webpage back when I was at the director of Floridians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty, and the webpage has completely shifted these days. But my point is simply that's how they skewed the numbers by you were Hispanic white or Hispanic black, and there wasn't a designation for Hispanic. So we never, all we saw was white, black, other, instead of a designation for people who are brown skinned Hispanic. So that's just one little piece about how they skew the numbers. Jeff has a comment, but also Grace Natalia asked about women on death row. Do we have any women on Florida's death row at this time?
We have one woman on Florida death row, and she is housed separately from everyone else. She's at a different prison, and I often think about her and how lonely that must be.
Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Abe. We have got we got a couple of things coming up, but Execution Intervention Project, we're doing an event in Panama City on Friday. We've got a billboard going up for Paul Everett, and Paul is one of my guys, and he has a very interesting case. I put a one of my blogs, sort of going over his story in the chat. It's interesting that I mean, it's not interesting. I imagine it's obvious that people are beginning to reach out more and more, earlier and earlier, to folks like myself who are basically working on individual situations, are engaging with individual guys, because there's certainly a lot of angst that a lot of these guys are going to be next. I think I've got at least four guys in Florida that I think that feel like they could be the next person at any moment. I also wanted to quickly say that with Anthony Wainwright, back in June, another one of my guys, we thought that he had years left. I mean, we thought that, he just trying to read the tea leaves, trying to look at the patterns and who was being chosen and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's very important. I mean, I don't want to be too macabre about it, but I don't think anyone is safe. I mean, I think if you've been through clemency, you and maybe hedging even that a bit, but if you've been through clemency, I think that it is. Yeah, it's very possible that you could be next. And along those same lines, with Paul, though, we're going to be there 10 o'clock Friday morning um, with his family. And it's one of these situations. I'll say this, and then I'll get off of it. But it's one of these very strange cases in that horrible crime took place. You have a family that wants justice and wants it yesterday. They are demanding from Governor DeSantis that he be executed and be executed now. And in this situation, we have a guy that the lawyers have, been investigating, engaging, who is in Alabama, bragging that he is the actual perpetrator of the murder, and he set Paul up. Again, all of these stories, they all have their nuances, they all have their different perspectives, and different facts. And I'm not wanting to get into the weeds, but I guess what I'm trying to say is there are a lot of cases out there, as Grace was saying, that have a tremendous amount of questions. And unfortunately, 30 days is not enough time to get those facts out there and try to save someone. So I encourage people, if they have the ability, to perhaps engage these guys earlier if possible.
Just so if anybody doesn't know, Reverend Dr. Jeff Hood, his project is the Execution Intervention Project, and he is a spiritual advisor to numerous people on death row in various states. Jeff, what's the billboard going to say?
So we have, for my sanity, we have come up with a standard schema that we are using on all billboards, and they say save and the person's name, and then it gives a direction to go to our website. Um, that might not sound all that fun to people, but for us, it got to a point where we were having to debate so much what should actually go on the billboard that we weren't having enough time to plan, these events around the billboard. So it's going to say Save Paul Everett. Again, we've got members of his family coming in from all over the country, and I know that. And I guess this is something else that needs to be said, but I know that for Paul, this is giving him a lot of hope and a lot of, just, I guess, reassurance that there are people out here standing with him. And I can't say that enough for these guys, that to know that people are with them before they get a date, I think makes all the difference in the world.
For sure. We've been saying for a long time that people with real issues to be brought out to the public need a campaign that starts years ago. And when you get a date and it's 30 days away, it's nowhere near enough time to get traction on these things. So thanks for that work, Jeff. And I believe that we'll be live streaming that on the various social media channels. So that's 10 a.m. Central Time on Friday.
10 a.m. Central Time, and yeah, I think it's. I hope that we get more things like this going for a lot of different people, not just us, but a lot of other people too.
Well, I'm sure Grace actually texted me that had a conversation that we needed to have about this tour that we're doing next week. But she said after 3 o'clock, I'm on warrant watch, and literally it's people sitting there. We saw this. I experienced a lot during the federal execution spree and it was also on Fridays. People would get that tap on the shoulder, let's go, and they move you. There's no warning. They come, they get you. You don't know who it is, and there's dozens of people that are warrant ready in Florida. So that's the situation.
Yeah, you don't even. I mean, you don't even get to say goodbye. I mean, it's very swift, and it's very heartless.
They tell you to grab your address book and strip for a search and then come with us.
Yeah, it's very heartless.
Very heartless. And I actually wasn't going to talk about this tonight, but I am going to put in the chat. There is a campaign we're working on, a man named Ernest Suggs, who has a deeply concerning case. We've been working with his counsel, and there's going to be more coming out in the coming weeks in a website and a video, but just drop that in the chat if you'd like to go ahead and sign up for updates. We're doing that in partnership with the U.S. campaign to end the death penalty. So stay tuned for that.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Grace and Bridget's cat. What's the name again?
Patty, yeah,
Patty.
she's
Okay.
not going to be invited anymore because she just is a show stealer.
Yes, but thank you all very much, and we're gonna move on. We've got two other cases to talk about tonight, so thank you both very much.
Abe, I was going to drop in really quick and just very quickly say that I had a great conversation with Paul's attorney on Saturday, and it was very interesting to me that she was very much of the perspective of we really need help, and not in a like, we're going to tell you what to do, da 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 kind of way, but in a like, we're overwhelmed here in Florida. And I thought that was very interesting because that's very different than what we've gotten in a lot of other states.
Usually, it's we've got it. You guys don't need to do anything, and so that's good. Good to. I mean, it's sad, but it's also important to recognize there's a role for everybody, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're grateful for everybody attending tonight. So with that, when I see Connie is in the audience and Ebony is not here, I don't think. Is Ebony on this? Oh, there she is.
Yeah,
Okay,
she
great.
is.
So Ebony is on the panel. Ebony, if you're ready, you can turn on your camera. I'm just going to share real quick my screen. This is Death Penalty Action's web page, and you can see that here's how you can find the petition for our petition for Ronald Heath and also our petition for Kendrick Simpson. And you click on that there and you get the petition for Kendrick Simpson. We talked about this case a lot on the last forecast in January, because he was coming up on January 14th was his clemency hearing in Oklahoma, and we wanted people to be able to advocate. And many of you did. Thank you very, very much for that. Unfortunately, Kendrick was denied a recommendation for clemency, even though the issues are very clear that the jury didn't hear a lot of the evidence about his post-traumatic stress disorder, and he has a number of mitigating factors that should have been considered. And of course, he has improved himself tremendously as a person, and there's no need to execute him. And of course, he was denied a recommendation for clemency, which means that in Oklahoma, what that means is you can't the governor can't grant clemency. It's kind of like in Texas as well. If the governor doesn't have if there is not a recommendation from the parole board for clemency, then the governor's hands are tied. Now, in this case, in Oklahoma, what we know is that there is legislation pending, Senate Bill 601, which would impose a moratorium on executions pending further reforms. And that's why our call to action is that when we call the governor's office, and this is what we'll be conveying in the petition, is also Governor Stitt, you have the power to grant a reprieve, to push this date off, pending the outcome of the moratorium legislation. We don't know how it's going to come out, but if it's possible that all executions will be put on hold, then we should wait, right? That execution is just 2 days after the execution of Ronald Heath in Florida. Ebony is with us, Ebony Gusby from Oklahoma. And Ebony, welcome. What would you like to add for everybody to know about Kendrick and the campaign there in Oklahoma?
Well, with regards to the campaign, I know that humanizing death row is there have been doing like virtual campaigns urging to reach out to the governor and really pushing that it's not over, until it's over, as long as Kendrick Simpson has breath in his body, then able to actually to to still make our voices heard and to possibly reach, the governor and and others. And I do want to say with regards to the moratorium, um, of course, yes, with Senate Bill 601 through the legislators is one way that we in Oklahoma that you have the moratorium, but it is within the governor's hands to put the moratorium back on himself. He is the one actually who decided to take it off, but it is through the legislators or the governor to put the moratorium back on. So, but even if he did not want to initiate putting it back on, I'm glad that you did mention the reprieve because with the reprieve, um, he could grant a Mr. Simpson up to a 60-day reprieve, which would possibly, give time for if the governor did not, want to be the one to initiate it. But with the Senate Bill 601, if it is able to come to the Senate floor for a vote, and if we're able to urge senators to, to vote yes and get a majority vote, get a majority yes vote, and then if it passes through the House and reaches the governor's desk, then he could still actually he'd be the one to to sign it into effect, even if he didn't initiate it. So if that was a possible way to try to get him to get him involved to say, okay, well, for whatever reason you may not want to initiate it, but you still have the power to grant a reprieve, which would give, if he was given the 60 days, give a couple of months and give it time to hopefully pass through the Senate and the House. So we are urging people to make their voices known, to call the senators to ask them to put Senate Bill 601 on the floor vote and to vote yes, and to urge their fellow senators and legislators to vote yes on it. And I know the U.S. campaign to end the death penalty, whom had was one of them that had the letter writing originally to the Pardon and Parole Board. I know they have updated on the website where people can still write a letter to the Pardon and Parole Board saying that they disagree with the decision, and to say that that they oppose the decision. I'm not going to go as far as to say that they would be able to go in and change it. I'm not know, but I do not know that for sure. But I know in the past they have voted um on a case that originally that it was something that they were I can't remember. It was something that it had something to do with it was really a negative thing um concerning those that were in prison, and they kind of they voted in favor for it, but then later on they changed it. So it actually ended up being like a negative thing, but they were able to go and change that. And I hadn't heard of that before. I don't know if it's just certain cases. I don't know if that would apply to actual clemency case, for execution. But I think it's still worth it to even go and to whether you signing that letter, whether you're making calls. I have made calls, or maybe call myself saying that, that I disagreed with it. And so I think just making your voices heard, signing the different petitions. We know that there's the death penalty action one, Catholics Mobilizing Network. They always put execution for put a protest petition out for everyone. I kind of think if I've seen any more out there. Um, I don't remember. Oh, humanizing death row. Like I said, they I know they had their petition out there, and I have seen different posts that Kendrick's mother and friends have shared. So I would encourage sharing those different posts too that speak to his humanity and the type of man that he is, friend that he has been, and I think that would help sharing that. Also, there was a letter that has been posted from one of the guys that's also one of Oklahoma 25, who is a dear friend slash brother to Kendrick, Alfred Mitchell, and I'm sure there's been others who have written on his behalf, but I know that was one that was circulating. So I think sharing things like that and still speaking about that speak to the humanity and just the speak to the reasons for granting a reprieve and for Mr. Simpson for his life, that very valuable life, to continue on.
Well, that's a lot that you shared, and thank you, Ebony, for all of those updates and all the things that you're doing. And we see your activity on social media all the time. We're grateful for that. Are there
Thank
any
you.
questions or
Oh, I'm
addition?
sorry. I say, and there. I know tomorrow at the Capitol at 9 o'clock. Um, at the Oklahoma State Capitol, there's going to be a opening day rally because sessions start back up tomorrow. So
9 a.m. at the legislature.
yes, with the legislators. Yeah, so you can call them, email them, go in person to speak with the legislators, um, and yeah, just being active. But yeah, it's supposed to be tomorrow from 9 to 12 o'clock outside on the south side
That's
step.
good to know. It's important. It's important that people know if you don't live in the state, you shouldn't be contacting legislators. That just annoys them, and to hear from people from outside the state, legislators only really want to hear from their own constituents, and some get really annoyed and can hold it against us if we put a lot of pressure on them from people who can't vote for them. So we do have actions going out to our folks that live in Oklahoma. Watch for that if you live there. And so that's just important with regard to any legislation. I want to give a couple of updates on that sort of thing in a moment. And okay, last call for questions about Oklahoma.
I mean, I had a question. It's Jeff. Do we know? I mean, obviously, well, first of all, I love you as always.
Thank you. I love you too.
You know that. But the second thing is, do we have any? I mean, obviously, Gentner Drummond has sort of fallen off the ladder in terms of being sort of the gubernatorial candidate that people can kind of um, look to as someone who might give us a little relief on the death penalty. I mean, is there any other candidates out there that are showing any sort of willingness to have any sort of conversations about the death penalty?
You're referring to like for the governor?
The governor's race. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I believe I don't I feel bad. I think it's Cindy Munson, I believe is her name, that is running, and she is a real big like not just social justice, but like criminal justice reform. I believe she has actually spoken out against the death penalty specifically. I believe so. But I know that she is has in the past been what is the word, been active, been vocal about criminal justice issues. Um,
I see. I'm putting
Specifically
her.
now about the death penalty, I don't know, but that is a very important. I'm glad that you asked me that, because I will look and search online. And actually, I have actually been to her office and spoken specifically with her. I I want to say, I think it actually was. I don't remember if it was about disability or not. Um,
She
but
doesn't
I
have
think
anything on
I
her.
think that that was what it was last year when we were trying to get the bill to push through, and to like try to get support and get a yes vote from different representatives and senators that visiting their offices. And I believe that she did talk about it. But as far as like just in the opening hearing anything, I can't remember anything specifically recently. I know that Senator Nikki Nice, Senator Mary Boren, they did a press conference at the Capitol. And I think they were doing some other actions. They were speaking on Kendrick's behalf, and not just only on his behalf, but actually, mentioning the moratorium, and um and ending execution. Um I cannot really remember any. I know Senator Goodwin. I know she was active when it came to previous with Mr. Tremaine Wood, with speaking, getting out there along with Senator Nice. But I haven't really heard much from a lot of leaders. Other than like some groups like the NAA, the NAACP, just like certain groups. As far as like with the legislators specifically, I haven't really been hearing much vocally like you would hit in the past, like
Hey, Abe.
really being out there.
I was going to jump in and say I did get an interesting phone call over the weekend from our old friend David Ballard, who told me that J.J. Humphreys is running for lieutenant governor
Yes.
this go around, and has said that he is interested in a moratorium on the death penalty in Oklahoma. And for those who are
Wow, that's
watching,
all.
J.J. Humphreys represents the right of the right in terms of the
Right.
Republican Party. He is.
He wants
It
to
doesn't get
execute
much more
flag
conservative.
burners.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there was a point where he wanted the death penalty for flag burners. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And so I think it really shows that people are coming to this issue for all sorts of reasons, and that's a
Right.
beautiful thing.
And I'm
Actually,
glad.
those your comments there are not our position as an organization, and in fact, JJ has been. We've done Zoom live events with him, and he came out really strong for Richard Glossip,
Mhm.
and is deeply concerned about a number of criminal justice reform issues. So as much as we say,
Yes,
well, he's
yes.
out there to the right of the right, he's also speaking our language in some ways, and we have to, I think, respect and lift that up. And we're going to see what happens. We're going to see what
I'm
happens
glad
in all of
to
these
hear
red
that.
states.
I'm not surprised, because I have seen he's been active in in some other cases, and then also in exposing a lot of the corruption within the system, and within the prison system, and has gotten a lot of flack, but he still is put him honorably put himself out there. So I'm not surprised to hear that, and I'm glad to to hear that he is supporting, because with the like the felony murder, he was one that big on that, and speaking out for Tremaine Wood and certain others. So I'm glad to hear that.
Well, Ebony, I'm just always grateful that you're for everything that you're doing, and for often you're the person that's leading us in delivering our petitions to the governor's office and being present to just about everything that's happening. And I love that you're present to all the different organizations that are working on this issue, because it takes all of us, and it's important that many different folks are doing different pieces of this puzzle. So we're grateful for you, Ebony, and for the work that's happening in Oklahoma. And maybe if things feel right, Suzanne and I will swing over there should this execution not be stopped on our way after Florida. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I want to thank you, Ebony, and turn it over now to Ronald Wires, who is here representing Project Hope to Abolish the Death Penalty. Esther sent me a note and said Ronald's going to come on and talk to us about Sonny Barton. So Ronald, take it away. Welcome.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's after 10 on the East Coast, so appreciate the opportunity to talk for a minute. We have a unique situation with Charles Sonny Burton in the fact that Friday, a week ago, the Supreme Court authorized, the Alabama Supreme Court, I should say, authorized the governor, which is how the process works in Alabama, at the request of the Attorney General, to set an execution date for Sonny Burton. Normally, when that happens, by Wednesday or Thursday, we have an execution date. That hasn't happened yet. So we're hopeful that clemency is indeed on the table. And Sonny's legal team has done a really fantastic job putting a clemency package, if you will, and a push out. And in fact, I'm going to drop that into the chat now. If you live out of the state of Alabama, which most of you on the call do, there is how you can sign his clemency page. So some facts about Charles's case. It occurred in 1991. The victim of this crime, which we'll find out more about in just a minute, because Mr. Burton was not the shooter, put a pin in that, was Doug Battle at an AutoZone in Talladega in 1991, Doug Battle. Mr. Charles Sonny Burton did not kill anyone. He did not encourage anyone to kill, and did not even see the shooting. From all that we can gather and through what I understand from testimony, he was not even in the AutoZone when this customer was shot. So while the shooter was initially the shooter from this trial, they put two people. There were six involved in the crime, the holdup. They put two on capital trial. Both Sonny and the shooter were initially sentenced to death. Both of them received the death sentence, and the state itself later argued that putting Mr. Burton to death because the shooter, his sentence was overturned, would be, quote, arguably unjust. Yet here they are today asking for an execution date. Tori Battle, which was Doug Battle's daughter, 9 years old at the time of her father's death, recently wrote an op-ed in the Alabama Political Reporter, and I'll drop that in the chat as well, saying she does not want Mr. Burton to be executed. She says when she was approached by the Attorney General's office earlier in last year and stated her feelings on this, she was told that her opinion did not matter. I'm astounded by that. And of course, this is a nitrogen gas execution. We have seen the problems with those. I think this would be Alabama's 8th, if my math is right. And the last one that occurred, Jeff could definitely talk to this. The last one that occurred was the longest nitrogen gas execution to date. So there's evidence, mounting evidence, showing that this is not what we were sold as a bill of goods for nitrogen execution. So with all those things in mind, just want to talk about that case tonight real quickly. Also, I'll drop in here too an original member of the jury for that trial that voted for the death penalty last week wrote an article saying that she believes that that was the wrong choice and we should have made another choice. And the last thing I'll drop in there is just his overall clemency page. You can go and look at it and take a look at that. And if you're in the state of Alabama and you want to sign the petition, haven't had the opportunity, it's within there. And the last thing I'll do, I said that was the last thing and it wasn't, sorry. This is Mr. Sonny today. If I can get this to do that. Allie, let me know if that
You want to show the
eventually
picture,
comes
Donald?
up. Looks like, yeah, I'm working on it now. I think I just did it, but it looks like it may be uploading. If I can't, maybe Allie can.
Sure.
So
Okay,
Sonny is 75 years old today. Yeah, and that's a better picture of him. He doesn't have his fall helmet on there, and what I'll talk about with the fall helmet is Sonny is 75 today and has very bad rheumatoid arthritis. He's in the infirmary quite a bit. In fact, I'm told for the past 2 weeks he's been in the infirmary up to this call, the past 2 weeks. He falls many times and he is more days than not in a wheelchair. And yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That's the one I was talking about. That's the helmet that the state of Alabama issues. That cream-colored device on his head that is situated kind of crooked. It's made of a very dense foam on the inside. I've seen one of these on someone else that's on death row, unfortunately. But that's what the state gives him because even in his wheelchair, he is still a fall hazard. And you can see his right hand is kind of wrapped up underneath his left hand there, and that's the hand that has severe rheumatoid arthritis in. So that's some facts surrounding Sonny's case. I'm going to sound like others on the call, and I don't want to be morbid here, but Mr. Burton has spent more days on this earth, a lot more of them than I think he's going to spend in the future. I do not understand Alabama's desire to make this happen. What are we trying to prove? And I'll leave it at that. I won't get into too many opinions tonight, but that's the facts around Sonny's case. The reason we're on the call tonight, so let me go back to that. The reason we're on the call tonight is in Alabama, you're supposed to get a 30-day notice before you're to be executed. We have seen that happen in as few as 27 days. So we were concerned by the time we got back together in March for the forecast that it would be possible that Mr. Burton would be executed. We hope that's not the case. But that's why we want to come over here tonight and talk about it. And again, the governor has not given a date yet, and we're hoping this very strong clemency push will reach her. She is in I don't like this term, a lame duck season. She is not up for re-election. She will be out this time next year. We'll have a new governor in place. Governor Avi is probably 81. I'm going to guess on that one. So we're hoping all these factors. And indeed, last year we saw her give clemency to Rocky Myers. So we're hoping
Hey,
all
can
these
y'all be quiet
factors
real
and the
quick?
very good job that
Go ahead, you can go ahead
You
and
got-
finish your thought there, Ronald, and then
Okay, yeah.
Jeff's got something to add.
we're hopeful that all these factors will lead her toward clemency and grant that for Sonny. There's no reason, wasn't even the shooter. There's no reason we should do this. There's no reason we should do this at this point. So that's all I got. Jeff, you got something?
Well, yes, I do, but I was actually yelling at my kids, so I apologize for interrupting you. That's where that loud noise came from. But I had two things I was going to say. One is we are going to be in Alabama. Ronald, I can call you and talk to you more about this in the next day or two, but we're going to be in Alabama Thursday morning. We've gone billboard crazy. We're putting up a billboard in Talladega for Sonny. The case is there out of Talladega in Talladega County. And we are actually putting up a billboard in the exact same location that we put up a billboard for Anthony. And we're gonna partner with Anthony's family and a number of folks there in Talladega to make the argument that what happened to Anthony, we do not want to happen again. We do not want to see another nitrogen execution in Alabama, and we certainly don't want to see someone who is disabled and has intellectual disabilities like Sonny Burton, killed by nitrogen, or killed at all for that matter, of course. And Thursday night at Auburn Unitarian Universalist Church, our fellowship in Auburn. We're going to do a book event from 6:30 to 7:30. So I'll be down there too. And so we're kind of, for everybody who's keeping up and taking notes, we're going through Alabama, down to Florida, and then coming back. So I think that this is a powerful moment, Ronald, and I'm thankful for Esther, thankful for you. Esther's going to be joining us in Talladega, so I'm grateful for that. And I think that we're just in a very powerful moment in Alabama because it does seem, and maybe I'm wrong, but it does seem like there's little fissures that are opening up. We're seeing, it almost feels like people are listening just a little bit. I hope I'm right, and I hope that continues. Thanks, Ronald.
Yeah, I hope you're right too, Jeff. I get that sense at times, and then at times I'm like, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's possible we are. So I share that same faith in that you do. Just want to mention really quickly, we had invited at a very late hour, we had invited Sonny's legal team to come on here, but I'm not sure we got the message through in time. Did want to point out they did a really good job producing a documentary that came out for a select showing in Montgomery this past Wednesday. My understanding is it's not available to the public, but they did take about 20 minutes worth of snippets for it and send it to the governor's office with his clemency package. And thought it was well done as you could get, probably. No offense to anyone, some legal aids and stuff like that to do a quick documentary on. Was well done. Had a lot of his family there. Sonny has a huge family. I came away from that documentary knowing that Sonny has a huge family that loves him very much. He like myself is a stepfather, and made it more so than me. Made a big difference in some kids' life that didn't have a father to look up to, and that story was well told. So just want to point that out. Thanks, Abe.
Thank you, of course. And Alice, I see your hand raised. If you could put your question or comment in the chat, please. We are due to past experience, we can't bring people up that we don't actually know in person because we've been burned too many times by people that then do things that are nefarious. So I apologize for that and invite you to put your comments or questions in the chat. So it is noteworthy that the Alabama Supreme Court has approved a date, and one hasn't been set yet. Hope we're not jinxing it, and we do hope that, as you suggested, Ronald, that Governor Ivey is choosing life in a case like this, and will do so. We'll I remember with Rocky Myers, it just sort of dropped in late in the day on a Friday, and suddenly, boom, a case we'd all been preparing for a long time was off the table, and we were all very excited and happy about that. So, with that, those
Yeah,
are the
right about
we
a
want to
year
talk
ago.
about today.
Right about a year ago
What's that?
as well. So right about a year ago that Rocky received his clemency. We're almost a year anniversary of that.
Yes. All right. So, Allie, you wanted to add something, and we do want to talk about a couple other things real quick. Go ahead, Allie.
Yeah, so yeah, it was almost exactly a year. I remember that day very well. We were all on this Zoom celebrating. It was really special. But a lot of you guys may have seen on social media or on email the last couple of days that the federal judge in Luigi Mangione's case dismissed two of the charges, one of which was the charge that would have carried the death penalty. So that was really exciting, and we had been working with a number of different groups and different individuals across the country and across the world advocating for Luigi Mangione, especially in the context of just this current federal administration's love for the death penalty. And so we are really grateful that the death penalty is off the table now for Luigi. And because of that, we'll be able to pull our advocacy out of that case. But it just was a really exciting blow to an administration that would happily execute him and as many people as they can. So we're just a little bit excited about that.
I'll just add, if I'm showing you the email that I sent out last night to folks that had signed a petition for Luigi and a few others on our list, that includes some of the images from, Allie did a terrific job organizing so all the different groups that have popped up about this case and getting them all at least talking to each other and helping them understand that when it comes to the death penalty and death penalty actions presence, ours was only there about the question of due process and the question of the federal government stepping in and stepping on a state that has chosen not to have the death penalty and which is fully capable and actually running its own prosecution. So some of the hearings have been in state court and some of the hearings have been in federal court, and the federal court is about whether they can have the death penalty, and that is now off the table. So you see in some of the billboard trucks that ran and graciously gave us space. We didn't have to pay for this, but we just made it clear that nothing could be presented with our logo about it that was not exclusively about the death penalty, and we're just grateful that they included that. And then Jeff and I were both quoted in Rolling Stone magazine, and then this guy right here in the middle. So this is Scott Langley here, our Death Penalty Actions co-founder and one of our staff members, special projects coordinator now, and volunteer Bill Dobbs in the middle, and Dorit. Dorit is another volunteer in New York City, and they've been showing up for all these hearings with a sign like this. And in any case, this is we are just grateful to be able to take this off our plate because it's been dropped. And while I have us here, I'm also going to share this petition that we've been running, which we also had some pretty good traction on. An article I wrote a letter last week to Jamie Raskin, who's the senior Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, asking that they look at the question of extrajudicial executions and ICE in the United States and the behavior that they've got. And so this has picked up some traction as well, and that's on our webpage as well. We invite you to take a look. And there was also just on towards the end of the vigil for Mr. Thompson, who was executed last week in Texas. We had a robust conversation with Rob Dunham from the Death Penalty Policy Project about the continuum, as he put it, of government abuse, government taking lives, and because he's been calling out these extrajudicial executions as well. As you know, our normal focus is on judicial executions. So that's what's happening. Allie, what else did you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to address Michael's question real quick. He was asking if New York has the death penalty. New York doesn't have the death penalty, but in a executive order signed by Donald Trump in the latter half of last year, he basically ordered for his DOJ to pursue death sentences anywhere that they could, even in jurisdictions that have since abolished it. So that was concerning. But no, New York technically does not have the death penalty.
They did for a little while in the 1990s, and then it was disallowed by the New York courts, and they've not seen fit to bring it back. So, but any state that doesn't have the death penalty in its law is still susceptible to the federal death penalty, and that's one of the curiosities. And of course, as Ali mentioned, the Trump administration has an agenda to bring in the death penalty any place they could. In this case, with Luigi, they actually the Attorney General Pam Bondi calling for him to be executed even before he was indicted. Okay, not even going to have a process, and he hasn't even gone to trial yet. This is all the stuff has been just about all the pre-trial motions. So we'll see if they even continue a federal prosecution now that the death penalty is off the table. So we have that. And with that, if there are no other final questions or comments from our panel, are there? No, great. I'm going to just share my screen again real quick and share with you. This is what we'll be talking about a lot at Death Penalty Action this year. Is the For Whom the Bells Toll campaign. I'll put a link to this in the chat, or maybe Allie, you can. But this is what it is, and this is one thing you can do to get folks involved in your community. It's an easy lift for a faith community to take this on. Take a look.
Right now, several states across the country are in a mad rush to execute people on death row. With so many lives at stake, communities of faith are standing up in opposition to this continuation of the cycle of violence. There are 3 simple ways communities of faith can help. First, add a special time of prayer during your services prior to a scheduled execution. We ask that you pray for the victim's family, the offender and their family, legal teams, court officials, executioners, and others impacted. Second, toll a bell for 2 minutes on the day of an execution. If you don't have a bell, display a banner or sign showing your opposition to the death penalty. Third, go to our website, forwhomthebellstoll.org, to learn more about our movement. Order an action kit unique to your state and register your participation. We must act now because time is running out for so many men and women on death row. Together, we can abolish the death penalty.
And with that, if you have our closing video all set up, I'll just share that, we've got some buttons like this that people can wear, and we're encouraging folks all over the country to engage in this. But you'll be hearing a lot about this campaign as we go through Florida the next 10 days. The execution is on the 10th. So Suzanne and I will be throughout that state, sharing the Delaware Bell and the story behind that, and its opportunity, the stories behind why people are tolling bells at the time of execution and what the impact of that has been. Ebony, did you have a last thought to share?
Yes, I a question concerning Mr. Luigi. I had saw online where it at least in one article, it might have been more, where it was talking about the federal charges, as far as the death penalty being taken off. But it had said that you could possibly, and I'm not saying this like anticipating, or of course not hoping that this, would happen, but stating that it could be at the state level that they could actually, root charges and do that. Is Have y'all heard anything about that?
Again, New York State, where the crime was, does not have a death penalty. So,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Now, there's also some charges in Pennsylvania. I don't think those charges are punishable by death, but of course, Pennsylvania also has a governor that's not about the death penalty, and has actually endorsed the legislation to abolish it there. Speaking of governors and legislation to abolish the death penalty, we're waiting for Governor DeWine in Ohio to come up with his. He has announced he's going to have something to say about his what he's doing with the death penalty in the last year of his term. And, Governor DeWine just the other day approved 3 more death sentences. The governor in Ohio doesn't set the execution dates. They're set by the state Supreme Court. But Governor DeWine has seen fit for his entire term. Now he's in his second term. So for the last 7 years, has taken all people with an execution date and approved them, pushed them back to the other end of the line. We have more than 30 people with execution dates in Ohio. Governor DeWine is not allowing any of them as Attorney General. He prosecuted these cases, but as governor, he put on a different hat and has been consistently pro-life Catholic, and we have to applaud that. So we'll see where it goes. We're going to hear about that sometime soon. I did want to note also, we'll see what happens tomorrow. There's another vote on it, but last week in Indiana, the legislature rejected the bill to add firing squad. And earlier, they removed gas suffocation from that bill. And this is a pretty Republican dominated legislature, and they chose to not go forward with expanding their method of executions. So that's some good news. And we hope to keep bringing you some more good news. We'll see what happens. But in any case, here we go. Florida's got 3 executions before we see each other again. I think March 1st is, well, let's see, March 1st is a Sunday. So we'll be back March 1st, just days before the execution in Florida. And we'll see what other dates get added to the March calendar. So with that, thanks everybody for being with us. And Allie, if you want to take us out, we'll be all set.
Zoom is not letting me share the audio right now. I don't know why. I did send you the link to the video.
Oh, okay, then let's do that. This is you. Here it is. All righty. Thanks everybody for being with us. Take a look at this. This is Ron McAndrew, former board. And you can find this on the just at the bottom of the Death Penalty Action Facebook pages, where you can find this and a whole other set of videos of voices against the death penalty. Can you hear that?
On a small farm.
Nope.
A lot
Now
of
we
Bible
can.
reading in front of the fireplace
Yes.
in the evenings. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth was often.
We could hear it. Now we can't.
That's what I
Well,
believe.
I guess the sound's not working. So with that, thanks everybody. You can find that video at the bottom of Death Penalty Action Death Penalty page, and on our YouTube page. There's a whole series of videos. So take a look at that. And again,